Welcome everybody to kind of a special recording session of the Roundabout cast. Uh, I'm your host Willer, joined by Bradley.
That's me.
We're doing a lot of Worm right now because Thanksgiving break just happened. We're doing this before we record podcast 26. I think we're on. Uh, the reason why we're doing this before is because I read a shit ton of Worm.
Yeah, as we're approaching the end, Willard just went on a super binge sesh and
It
it snowballed.
it kind of helps that it's getting so good. um, if you want to know how far I've gotten, let's just say that my mind is breaking like a shard right now.
Hey.
It's quite good. Um, However, this comes with some caveats. Um, One, we're gonna be recording these ahead of time, but they won't all be released on the same podcast week. A couple reasons. We don't want to overload y'all with Worm is most of the reason. I feel like it will be it's already going to be too much Worm for us to record to where we're having to do it on a separate day, let alone release it out into the world. So you're going to get smaller, like 10 to 30 minute per arc chunks, except one arc that might be an hour by itself. I guess we'll
Oh
see.
yeah.
Um, and these will be going up with the following podcast full episodes. This also does mean though that we won't be responding to comments until like arc 27. I'll gather up all the comments we get from all of these. We'll respond to them, but we will be responding to everything on Reddit and YouTube and email as
Us responding on email as if we get
look,
there.
man, I had to throw it in there. Maybe someone will send a thing. Um, the ever running joke.
Roundaboutcast at AOL.org.
That's super not it. It doesn't even matter what it is, does it? If you know, you know.
If
And
you
I,
know, you know.
and I know none of you know. Before we start on 23, 22 was a heated time, as you guys might remember, because I was just pissed at the world and at Taylor, little bit at the story in general, and you guys came forth, specifically Mega Fire 7, Code Zeta, and James Goddard all kind of came in and gave some of their thoughts on the whole Taylor doing a double murder thing.
Which
Some might
which
call
we
it a manslaughter, but I'm,
yeah.
I'm gonna call it a
And
murder.
we asked for a lot of discussion.
Yeah,
So I was really glad. I'm glad that people are uh I'm glad that this is like a community for this book that people just love discussing things like this about it.
for sure. Yeah, no, we're super glad for all these comments. So part of it was y'all help recontextualize like things from Taylor's end and how the heroes might have seen the situation and how like scummy it could have been. I don't want to dwell too much on it because we did talk about it last week and we have a lot of room to talk about now. This is such a small deal compared to the stuff that's about to happen.
Oh yeah.
So it's like it's not worth spending too much time on. But I do have 2 points where my stance doesn't change here. One is that as soon as Taylor turned herself in, there was a best case scenario, and it was that she would get probation because every other scenario is either her getting like executed or sent to the birdcage or some other really terrible prison. She at least gets to still be a hero, which at the end of the day, deep down inside, that violence and action is something that she craves. It's kind of part of how she's defined her personality. Um, the concessions that come with being a hero we can talk about when we talk about 23, but this is still the best case. She gets that rewarded kind of to her after doing the double murder, which in my opinion it's like the universe just kind of worked out in the best possible way there. She even got tagged out of the picture, which was something that she could have bent for. Um, and I still do think that Tag, as much of an asshole that he was doing his job because Taylor came in as a maniac. You can defend her actions of killing Coil, and I never had any problems with her killing Coil. I was like, yeah, that makes sense. You go, girl. As much as it'll fuck her up in the future, she was super justified. Um, I don't feel that way about this one because she comes in, she's a person that will rip out eyes and put maggots in people's eyes. Just a lot of weird eye shit. Uh,
Yeah,
she
and
will
like
almost kill Triumph as well, but go on.
I think the I think like the line in the text that like I think kind of firmly cemented my position on what Taylor did at the end of 22. And to be clear, my position is kind of like I think what she did was wrong. She did a bad thing. I can see how someone in her situation would do that,
Totally.
but I think like the part of the text that kind of made me feel this way is where Taylor herself, before she passes out, is cognizant of what she's doing, and she says, I could have called the bugs off, but I didn't. And then she starts to do the thing where she is like, oh, well, this is for the greater good. And then she's like, actually, you know what? No, it's not. This is revenge. Like,
Yeah.
she knows what she's doing.
Yeah. And if it's not clear, my stance is not Team Taylor. In fact, I kind of hate her guts sometimes, but I'm super fascinated in her journey either way.
Yeah,
Um,
that's where I'm at.
it's just exhausting, like I said last time.
It's
My
like,
my second point. Go on before I get to the second point.
yeah, I was just like, the first time I read this book, I was like, super team Taylor. I was little boy Brad. And I was like reading this book like a motherfucker. Like and I was just like, oh yeah, I like her. She's the protagonist. She's cool. And then I don't know. I don't know what it is, just maybe rereading the book or being in like more of an adult now. I'm like, holy shit.
Maybe coming into this with stories like Breaking Bad and Kill Bill, where the main character is not necessarily the
Yeah.
best person. I've grown used to stories where the main character does not deserve that much sympathy.
Yeah,
Um,
and that's like,
yeah,
between like my first reading and subsequent readings, like I consumed a lot more media that is similar to Worms, so like it kind of flavors my rereads, and I can be like, oh, well, I feel different about this now in a good way.
it's the same way where I was like, and as far as understanding what she did and why she did it, I totally can. I still think she's a piece of shit. The same way I said, like, oh, Regent is pretty culpable for all the messed up shit he did, even though I can understand all of it. That's just kind of, I have a stance where it's like, I can understand where you're coming from, but you have to be a good person today, in my eyes. And I have to extend that to our main character here, despite the fact that being the main character, you kind of molded to kind of be on her side a little bit more.
Yeah,
Um,
and it's funny because like all that stuff we just said, like the past 2 minutes, like if you were to replace character names, I've probably seen like the exact same thing said like on the Breaking Bad subreddit. So
yeah.
it's funny.
Um, the second main point was just that. So she kills Alexandria and Tag, and we could argue forever about how much others felt justified in that, like how much the other um, heroes, like why they were so lenient on Taylor because they kind of saw how fucked up Alexandria was being and Tag was allowing it to happen, yada yada, right? But I think my point here is, say a lot of people wouldn't agree with, say, President Trump's actions, right?
Yeah.
Someone might. Oh, I gotta put my head down as I say this because there's snipers pointing right
How
at
do
it.
you get the red laser pointing in your window?
Let me finish, sniper. So say someone kills the president and they have these super justified reasons. That's all cool and all. You should get thrown in a fucking cell because you're a terrorist now. Like,
Yeah.
America does not negotiate with terrorists. Most countries shouldn't. And as a result of that, it's like, I feel like Taylor got such a slap on the wrist for killing big figurehead figures of the world.
Yeah. I
And this
think
doesn't just extend to president. It could go for like governor or a military chief. Like, you could be justified. They could have been bad people, and I don't think what they're doing here is even as close to like some of the stuff that people would actually assassinate a figurehead for. Um, but it's like, the point is there needs to be a repercussion and an example set, and
yeah.
that's kind of where I draw. But go
And
on.
I think that's like the exact thing that Tag was warning about too. Because during their discussions, she's like, okay, I'll do this, I'll join you, I'll help you, but you let the Undersiders have free reign of the city. And he's like, not only am I against that, even if I was willing to do that, that sets a dangerous precedent that other villains are going to try to want to take over cities. And then, Taylor doing this action and getting to join the wards, what kind of precedent does that send? Like,
Yeah.
people can do like villains can do birdcage worthy crimes and then just be like, oh well, end of the world's coming, I can just join the protectorate if you let me go.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point too, and that's becoming more and more relevant. I think that's good on 22. It happened. It just like I could confidently say that like what's coming next is really cool. I'm super for it. Some of the stuff here is addressed. Some of the stuff here, in my opinions, are reinforced. It's just one of those things that'll never sit right with me. But Worm is still like I can confidently say it's like my favorite book and maybe superhero fiction period now. So it
Damn.
just don't worry, guys. I'm loving it.
Yeah,
I
we're
do
on
have
we're
my
on the
critiques
team.
though. Yeah, I'm not on Team Taylor, but I am on Team
We're
Worm.
we're on we're on team all you guys, I guess.
Yeah, there you go. We're all in this together.
We're all in this together.
Just a bunch of entities floating around. So okay, Arc 23. We spent 12 minutes almost talking about 22, but
Jeez.
maybe we won't even talk that long
But
for
yeah,
23.
that
But
was comment discussion. So
yeah, it was good. That was healthy. Um, 23. The main theme of it, I think, is like the way that Taylor has to deal with changing the way that she has trained herself to be a cape, where she had free reign to be violent and give all her impulses control. While here, she has limitations that she doesn't understand and struggles to cope with. And I feel like the people giving her these limitations, they're mostly right for it. I feel like they give really compelling arguments to why Taylor needs to just chill out. Um, at some points, though, I can see where she's coming from, and she has some good points as well. So I think there was a good balance there. I think Taylor is still mostly in the wrong here. She does need to be humble for a bit and fix her image before she can really get to doing more effective things, or as she puts it, not just being butterfly girl. But I think it's part of the process, right? Like
yeah.
you're getting a slap on the wrist. Please just play along. Like you don't have to fight us on everything.
Yeah. I really love how we kind of get to look at like the clashing ideas between Taylor and the PRT on how these things should be handled. Because I think you're right. I think they both kind of have points where Taylor gets working with them. Taylor kind of gets to see why the wards probably lose so much. They have all these limitations, there's protocols they have to go on. You can't do this, you can't do that. And she's like, oh, well, if you guys just didn't have rules and you were just as violent as possible, you could win every time. But they're like, we can't do that because we have responsibilities to the public. It's kind of like back during like the bank robbery, Kid Win had this giant cannon and there were like all these damages to the bank, and it's like, yeah, if the heroes went all out like the villains did and didn't care about bystanders or like, the costs of repairing the city, then yeah, maybe the heroes would win a lot more. But they're here to save people, not to get the bad guy and destroy things in the process.
They're kind of fighting a war and not just fighting battles.
Yeah.
They have a reputation to keep in mind, and they're also fighting the battle of being capes. Like there's been a lot of undercurrents of like if we fuck up and we show humanity how terrible we can really be, there's gonna start being some uprisings like anti-cape sentiment and civil wars over this, and all the innocent people are gonna get murdered by us because we're actually monsters. So let's keep it low, like let's keep it down, let's keep it civil, and I think that's really important.
Yeah.
um I think that like That's a recurring theme that is some of the most interesting stuff in this arc. It has a lot of Defiant and Taylor moments, which you know I'm all about. In fact, it
Yeah,
opens up and it's bookended by really sweet, like Defiant moments in both of the opening and closing chapters. Um, and it's just like he's already grown so much, and I mean he still has a long way to go, but it just makes me really happy to see how much he's grown.
yeah,
And Taylor's kind of starting to um, accept his help or maybe his kindness, because he's really extended Taylor the largest olive branch, you know.
yeah. It's like if you told me 20 arcs ago that Taylor was going to be flying around working with Arms Master and Dragon, I would just be like, you're obviously joking. Like,
They're basically mom and dad superhero
they
world.
super are.
Oh man, they're great. Um, we get Taylor's new teammates here, or they're new teammates for her probationary period before she is drafted into a proper ward team. Um, so a big concern I had at this time, I don't have this concern anymore, but I think it's worth saying for what my mindset was at the time. Um, was that with 11 characters, I think it was 11. Like she has so many new teammates now, and I lost track of them, and I was like, how much time can she really spend with some of these people and like form lasting bonds with them? It wasn't really an issue for this group of characters, maybe a bit of an issue for a future group of characters though. But I can say that yeah, it wasn't such a big deal here. Um, some interesting points of this chapter is also like Taylor gets to see the fun side of the ward, which is how much they banter. It's just kind of like too cool for them. She's like, "Oh, they're some of their jokes are so cringy," and I'm like, "Taylor, you're fucking cringy." Um, it's all wholesome and fun, and I think this it just makes you think like if she always had this kind of support system and this kind of relationship with her team, would she be a vastly different person now? Because the Undersiders were a bunch of enablers when you
Yeah.
get down to it.
And it's kind of crazy because obviously there was some comedic relief, and I guess a lot of that would usually be Alec, but in most of her like interactions with the Undersiders after the first few arcs, she always has things on her mind like one like two of these people are murderers, or they did this horrible thing without consulting me, or straight up Taylor's getting threatened with violence, or she's realizing that they are totally okay with some other horrible thing, and they're constantly fighting for their lives and things are very somber. And the heroes just have this support structure because they're all there, for the most part, because they want to be, because they're good people who want to help.
And it's saying they're good people is also like very interesting because it feels so easy to be a villain here. The villains win most of the times. They have so many less restrictions. They get money, which is a big part of like a little later in this chapter talking about all the perks of being a villain. And also the way you get powers is through trauma. So like from the offset, you're starting off at a negative. You're starting off with a warped mental state as soon as you get your power. So it's really admirable that these heroes are here and they're doing their best and they're fighting these horrifying foes sometimes.
Yeah, it really makes me admire the heroes just that much more.
On this kind of line of them bantering, Taylor at one point explains the cops and robbers mentality that Tattletale has brought up a couple of times, and it's kind of how the villains see this whole thing about good guys and bad guys. And I found it interesting that it didn't really click with any of the wards or the protectorate. When
Yeah.
she explains cops and robbers, just like what are you talking? I don't get it. What are you talking about? And I think it's a good way to show that like, aha, it's kind of like a cheeky game for the villains when they're fighting good guys, but for the good guys, it's like, no, you guys are just assholes. This is not a game.
Yeah, because like from the perspective of a villain, like they might not necessarily think what they're doing is all that bad, and the people they're fighting aren't usually trying to kill them outright. And
Yeah.
if they are like, and if they're fighting, it's usually, I don't know, being soft enough that they can still call themselves heroes. And so that's why I think villains can have that mentality. But the heroes are up against people who make monster dogs and sting you with hundreds of hornets and
Body possess
and
you.
do this like unprovoked sometimes. So like of like the heroes definitely do not view this as a little cops and robbers game.
Yeah, I really like that point. It really makes you recontextualize things from their side. Also, it stacks on with like the therapy sessions with Yamada that the wards had, and all the whole of Arc 9 and all that. Um, I don't have much to say about uh the third chapter here, but the fourth one is the one where Taylor is with the group of children, and
Yeah.
she makes this elaborate game to kind of get. It has a couple of effects. One of them is to kind of explain for the troubled children the problems of being a villain. And I thought this was really cool to hear from Taylor that she's at least considered that like the villain life is so dangerous, and she says a bunch of times that at the end of the day it's not worth it. So it's almost like she's being a little bit rehabilitated here, almost maybe.
Yeah.
Hopefully,
I was reading through it and I think it's kind of interesting like the parts that she say wasn't worth it.
yeah,
Because like she admittedly says if you are successful as a villain, you can have shitloads of money. You can have
respect.
like you can have all the respect and people working under you want. She's like despite all that, I don't think it is worth it. And she said this kind of for two reasons. One, just because like it's kind of like winning the lottery where it's like technically you can do it,
But you have to
but
win so many dangerous battles.
yeah, you can only win so many times. And she said getting all that came at the cost of like losing connections to people she cared about.
Yeah,
And she said that is just not worth it.
I really like that because at the end of the day, and I want to believe that this is her true emotions, is that like being a villain, it all started because she wanted friends. She only hung out and stayed with the Undersiders for so long, mostly because they filled a void in her life. And I like how when she thinks back on it, she's like, I wouldn't do it again, but those relationships are so important to me.
Yeah.
This is also nice because it lets the more troubled kids shine a little bit. Um, and she's like, "Oh, an Endbringer's attacking. How many of y'all would volunteer?" And there wasn't many volunteers, and then we get the moment where this arc shifts dramatically from lighthearted to just very dark, where Behemoth is attacking now.
Oh yeah.
And this felt like those moments where like the president is at like a rally and like a secret service just whispers something in his ear and he
And
has
he's
to
like
storm
mother
on.
of God.
Or like in season 5 of Breaking Bad, there's this scene where Hank gets really bad news while
Yeah.
he's like taking pictures with like a young girl volleyball team. It's one of those moments. And Behemoth, man, I wonder what he can do.
I wonder.
We'll talk about it shortly. That this interlude might have been the biggest plot twist in all of Worm.
Yeah, I was so ready for you to read the first few paragraphs and see who the point of view was, because I was
This shit was wild.
like, you do not it's Cody, guys. It's Cody, and you do not expect to see Cody here.
I think I as soon as I got here, I messaged you on the Discord. What? Why? How? And why is he here? Like I was just so confused.
Just
But
just think about this man real quick.
oh
He
my god,
was a high school boy on an esports team, and now he is on a Chinese military team of parahumans in the Indian subcontinent of an alternate Earth.
oh, that's so good. It's fantastic. I think this was the point where Worm started giving me the good chemicals.
The good chemicals.
I compare Worm now to like the book slash superhero version of One Piece, where it's this ungodly long story, but then stuff starts connecting in ways that blow your mind, and
Yeah.
I just feel amazing as
It's
like
like
it's all connecting.
the Behemoth story arc up to this point, Wildbow has just been like creating so many like alternate plot threads, and this is where he kind of starts to weave them together finally.
Yes, call him a weaver, if you will.
Hey,
Um, yeah, man, let's talk about the Young Bond because I feel like this is the coolest thing Wildbow has done relating to powers.
they are so cool. It is such like
Wow,
an
man.
interesting idea that they have like not only the way it's made possible because they have like one guy who splits up the powers and then they also found someone who can make powers stronger so like they kind of get back up to regular strength, but
Hmm.
it's the way they're coordinated where they're treated like a cult where they're kept like tired and their minds malleable, and they do so much training that they're usually pretty much all on the same page. And what comes along with that is that Cody knows he'll like never really be accepted by them because the way they operate is in the middle of battle someone will throw out a suggestion, and if it's accepted everyone like repeats it and then does it. And he says like the most crushing thing you could probably do is throw out a suggestion and no one repeats it.
Oof, man.
Oh,
This is fascinating because also like Cody's whole thing was that he wasn't part of the team,
oh my
and
gosh.
Kraus was, and he just could never get it in. That's a weird way to put it, but you know what? That's not inaccurate. He could never get it in with the team
Yeah,
or
poor Cody.
Noel. And it's just like, but now he's a part of this team, and he's an integral part because I noticed after they get obliterated in the final chapter, right? Before the interlude, we see like most of them die, and then they all reform. And I'm like,
Yeah,
oh, that's interesting. You find out that like this is Perdition's power, and Cody is now a very valuable member of this team. He has a super strong defensive ability, but he's still not part of the team. He's super
yeah.
integral, but he'll never connect with them. He still has that void that he had with the Travelers. So
The
good.
eternal struggle of Cody.
Oh fuck Cody though.
Tough break, buddy.
Motherfucker kills a cord, which is good because I fuck a cord.
I'll say my favorite thing about that, and we talked about this when you read it, where he deliberately makes a chord lopsided just because he knows a chord would hate it.
Oh Cody, you're all right.
But the thing, I just I love it. This moment before he attacks Tattletale, where like Tattletale just tries a gambit. It's complete bullshit. Where she's like, "Think about her." Um, but I think it's funny that that's just bullshit. But also, I think it's interesting, like the train of thoughts that this puts him on,
Yeah.
because the first her he thinks about is like number 32 in the Yongbon, like
Hmm.
the only one who's nice to him. And then he's like, or maybe I'm supposed to be thinking of Noelle, who was like my first love and like kind of caused all this. And then he suddenly like remembers this ringing in his ears, and he thinks of the Simurg, and he's like, when did the ringing start? And he's like, did the ringing ever stop?
This was the line of the arc right here. This
Oh
was
yeah,
so good. Um, he thinks of it as he's like killing them, right?
yeah.
And as he's thinking about killing Tattletale. Now, he would have gotten extra points if he did kill Tattletale. That's only half a joke. You know, me and Tattles, we go way back.
We go way back.
Um, oof. Yeah, this was incredible. I was worried he killed Chevalier. Thankfully, Chevalier lived to fight another day.
Dude, Chevalier is
Holy
such a
shit.
beast.
Um, but yeah, this was fascinating. Fuck Cody, he's an incel. Uh, that's all. That's all I got for arc 23. I
Cody
think.
the incel. Um, need we say more?
Need we? Well, do you have any more?
Uh, I don't know. I just love the idea that Cody got an interlude when he did.
It was insane, dude. Oh my god. I think this was the like I've already like really been liking Worm, but I think once I got to this interlude is when my binge started. And
You
I'm
were
like,
just like, you started this chapter up and you're like, what the fuck is happening?
I think from this point on, I was still finishing Death Stranding, and I was like, you know what? As I'm finishing this game, I'm just going to binge the ever-loving hell out of Worm, and it was the best decision. But that's enough for 23.
That's enough for 20.